Hello and welcome to the Blackout, where I get to talk to amazing people who do amazing things. And it's great to have Mark back in the podcast. Change person, change name, change everything. And a father. Thanks for coming today.
Thanks for having me. This is great. It's great to be back.
First off, like, how is fatherhood though? That's like...
I love it. Love it. I don't, now that I've experienced it, I don't think I could ever go back. I don't know what life was, basically, without it. It's been nothing short of a blessing and an eye-opening experience for sure. Very eye-opening. Mainly because I feel like a lot of my, and not that I need to go into too much detail, but my family went and really shown their true colors in positive and negative ways over the course of it. So it was like, I just really get to see who wanted to be there for the right reasons. And therefore I really get to become who I wanted to become as not only a father, but now an extended member of my family, because I feel like that's just how things transpired. And it was weird, but I wouldn't change anything that I did over the last year, because he's 13 months now. On the 22nd, he was 13 months. And yeah, like I said, it's been eye-opening, and I definitely wouldn't change anything in the process.
Okay, so if it's 13 months, you kind of had your son right smack in COVID. How did that affect the whole thing?
That was, I wouldn't call it a nightmare. It was just a lot more difficult to manage, because I believe Omicron, I think that's the variant that was going around at that time that had the hospitals basically on lockdown, other than those that were in there. So we were told that we were given 3 support people, but they couldn't come in at the same time. They had to come in at separate times. We ended up having only 2, because it was just easier just to not have too many people coming in and out. But I mean, entering parenthood while navigating COVID was something that I don't think anybody's really prepared for. It's challenging, but I mean, it's like you have to look out for not only your kid now, but you're protecting them from things that you don't even know how to protect them from. Because it's like you're taking absolutely every precaution to make sure that they're safe. And we ended up doing, we decided very early on that the first 6 months we weren't going to see anybody. We weren't going to visit anybody, have any visitors. It was just easier that way, so that he can build an immune system.
Right.
And just, and we also just get that time that we'll never get back, you know? Like that we would never get back if we didn't spend it directly with him. So I took off 10 weeks from work on parental leave. Got to enjoy that, which was fantastic.
Nice to live in Canada, hey?
Right? Right? Oh, it was fantastic. And I just, like, I truly got to appreciate him. Like, and not that he's doing anything for the first 6 months, but just witnessing that part of life. Like, you don't really understand how to be a parent until you're a parent yourself, and you don't really understand what it entails, what things really happen, but like the emotions, the feelings that go on with it, go along with it. But it's just, it was the best, for lack of better, it was the best and the worst time that I think over the last year. It was a very weird time for COVID, for having a kid, and the whole support system thing. But yeah.
So one of the things that stood out apart from your music, you know, and your lyrics are insane, but apart from all that was how you care for other artists, because you do things like having people come to perform right in front of the library, things like that.
Right.
But one of the things that also stood out was when one of the artists that performed there died by suicide, and like your reaction to that.
Yeah, that was different. That was Connor Moore, for the people that don't know. When I was doing that, it was Scotian Street Series.
Yeah.
I still plan on doing it, but I just have taken a very big step back from it just because I have, as we just spoke, there's a lot of other big things going on in my life that take precedent and take priority. But allowing other artists to become part of that was something that I didn't initially want to do because I wanted to take it as an opportunity to put myself out there. But then he showed interest more than anybody. Probably more interest than I was to the whole thing, but he was like super stoked for it, and he's like, "Can I be a part of it? Like, I won't step on your feet, but like, can I be a part of it?" I'm like, "Yeah, next week when we do it, we'll do some promo and whatever." And we did he shot like a promo video of him saying, but like how his style, what he does, why he does what he does, and I did the same thing, and I just edited the video, put it out as promo, and then we stopped at the location like a few days before saying, be sure to come out here. And it was cool because like I didn't expect anybody to show support like that. And it was a whole different appreciation that I found for it. And then, so that was in, I believe, either the spring or late winter even, because I was performing in the cold. That was wild. I was performing in the cold, and I just, he showed his interest. I did a few, and then I stopped for, I don't know if it was the summer or whatever the case was, but I stopped. And then Nova Scotia Music Week happened that year. I was performing. He didn't have a showcase through Music Nova Scotia, but they ended up putting on a show in Truro during the event. So I checked that out. He was performing, and that was the last time I saw him perform. And then we heard Christmas Day that he passed, and it was like, none of it made sense. Like I didn't, and it's funny you say suicide, because like I personally didn't look into it because I didn't want to know the full extent of what he did, why he did it, kind of deal. And it's just because it was a guy that I saw a lot of promise in. He that previous year he released his first album, Dear World, This Is Me, and it was a dedicated album to who he was and where he's from, like Dartmouth and the smokestacks that are over there and everything. Like it was a very much, what's the word I'm looking for? Concise project. Like it was very much well put together. The songs made sense, the concept made sense, and to just hear that he passed was just like, I mean, since then I've had quite a few tragedies in my life, but that was a big shock to me because it was never expected. That was something that I would have never anticipated, and I felt compelled to say something about it, and I felt like I owed this guy some kind of story, and I connected with him on a different level than I connect with other artists in the city. And I did when I was doing my Epidemic Mondays, back when I was Epidemic, I did the song No Role Models by J. Cole. I used that instrumental and did my own version of a tribute to him. We shot a video for it, and yeah, it was one of the first times I got to actually show my appreciation for somebody, but it was one of those, it's always the giving flowers after, which I've never been a fan of doing, but like that was a tragedy in the sense of not seeing it. There was no way we could see it coming. And yeah. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've definitely since then I've gone through a few other things because I mean, that following year I lost my best friend to a firefighting accident, and that rocked my world for sure. But like, music has always come around to kind of save me. I think because it's either I have to tell a story, or I have to reflect, or I have to use it as a way to cope and get through it. Because otherwise, I would have been one of the most lost. I don't even know if I don't even know. Like I don't even know if I'd be here right now if I didn't have the music to get through it.
Wow.
And not that I'm suicidal by any means.
I understand.
But like, it's just that music has a power that I can't describe, that it just allows me to get through things, put emotion into that I can't do any other way.
You know, it's like, I mean, apart from like you actually have music written on your skin, but there is, it's true. There is this whole thing about your music that's always just resonated with me from years ago. And like one of, I think, I mean, I have so many of your songs I love, but one of the ones that still raps to me and I think kind of like talks a bit about you in a way is Ego Trip.
Yep.
And it's like, I mean, the instrumental is beautiful, the lyric is great. I hate that the song is that short though.
It's always the short songs. And the funny, I don't mean to cut you off, but the funny thing you say about that, I feel like that was one of more of the songs that I slept on myself. Like I didn't anticipate it turning out the way that I did, because all the other tracks on that project were of the opposite light, basically. They were the more positive side of things, but Ego Trip was more like the reality check of everything. And you're right, I wish it could have been longer, but at the same time it allows you, it either makes you listen again.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? Like I have it on repeat. I play it pretty much every week on my radio show, but I've never asked you, why did you write that song? So like I'm asking you now, why did you write that song?
Well, Ego Trip was always about like, I basically not growing up in the industry, but I've been in the industry for it feels like over half my life now. And I've seen a lot of artists come through and put ego above concept, above priorities as far as like why you're doing what you're doing, instead of just like making the art be the focal point. You're putting your ego, and when it comes to shows, people feel like they need to be a part of shows. If they're not, they're wondering why, or they're willing to blame, or whatever the case was. And it was like, I don't want to, I feel like I need to shed some kind of light on this. Like, you ever had an ego trip? It's like, it's literally, you catch yourself that you didn't think you'd ever go down the rabbit hole of, well, why did this guy get this show? Like, I know I'm better than that guy. And I've had those moments, and it's like, I don't like to admit it, but I mean, I'm human. I've had times where I thought that I deserved opportunities more than other people, and growing up over the last, like, since that project came out, which was 2019, 19. So like 3 years, like I've adapted a whole different kind of way of living and a level of appreciation that you mentioned earlier. It's just, I don't see ego as a way of anything beneficial to me anymore. Like I see people for, and not that I need to put my podcast in anything, because we're on your podcast, but like, that's what I like talking to people about. Even just in normal conversation, bumping into somebody, it's like, I want to know somebody for who they are. I don't like, your craft can speak for itself, but who you are away from the craft, I think speaks volumes to how I would interact with you from here on out. And you carry yourself very well. You're very inviting. And I mean, like with this podcast, like we did this 3 years ago, and you're willing to have me on again. as a different moniker, a different alias. But it's like, it's great to finally appreciate people for their actions in being selfless more than selfish. There's times to be selfish, there's times to be selfless, and I've started to adapt that in my own ways, in my own lifestyle.
Okay, let's talk about the name change. Let's talk about the name change because,
Yes.
you've had this name that you've done a lot of things with. Like, okay, so my whole thing is, especially on the internet,
Yeah.
people kind of know what they are searching for, who they are searching for.
Yeah.
And you've built this cachet, this body of work with this name that, stands out. You have albums, you have EPs, you worked with that Blessed song is still my jam.
It pops up every now and again for me too.
Exactly. So, you build all these things and you're like, okay, no, I'm gonna change it. What's the story there?
So I went, essentially how the journey went from my music journey. I was Epidemic, the full word, EPIDEMIC, because I wanted to affect a lot of people with my music. I knew epidemic was something that affected a lot of people, and I was like, great, that's what I want to employ into my music, and like that's great. And then I just started searching up on Google, and it's like you search epidemic, and like my name wouldn't pop up, and that's not to say that it wouldn't eventually, but like there's so many results that pop up for that. And I started looking around for ways of going about it, and I thought about whole different name changes like what I did now, but I found when Jordan Croucher changed to JRDN, I was trying to take that in. I was like, what did he do? All he did was take out the vowels. And I was like, well, I can't take out the first vowel because then the name won't make sense. But I took out the vowels of the rest of them. I was like, EPDMC. And I was like, and I searched it and I was like, there's nobody there. There's no artist that I know of. And I was like, that's great. So let's go with that. But then COVID hit. And like, although I had that body of work under Epidemic, COVID really allowed me to step back, reevaluate who I wanted to be, what kind of artist I wanted to be, and the music, the genre, the style that I was growing into now. Because Epidemic was the rapper, the rap artist, the hip hop artist. But I felt like I was backed into that category so much that I couldn't, that dabbling in anything else other than that was not necessarily looked down upon, but it was more like, well, aren't you a rapper? What are you doing this for? I was like, I didn't want to feel like I had to justify it anymore. And the reevaluation process developed into finding another alias, because I wanted to have an alias that was more open to different genres, different styles of music, that was an artist as a whole, not a rapper. And that's essentially what I wanted to stay away from, was being labeled as just a rapper, because that's great, but like I'm more than a rapper. And I feel like my style has changed enough that like I appreciate it now that like I call myself an artist, but like the genres I use are pop music, R&B. I still use hip hop as like an influence of my style and my cadences and all that stuff. But like Marked was like, I wanted to stay away from an alias that wasn't me, because Epidemic was me to an extent, but it was like I didn't want to have to explain myself anymore, because Epidemic was always like, why? And I was being announced at shows as EPDMC, and I was like, it's Epidemic, but whatever. And I just got tired of feeling the need to explain myself every time, or reintroduce myself as what I'm supposed to be called. Whereas Marked is literally my first name and my middle initial. But I used it as a way of like, I honestly don't know how I came up with it. I was trying to keep who I was as the focal point. because using my first name was something that was, because my first name isn't exactly the most bright of names, you know, it's four letters, it's Mark. And I was like, I got to be able to use someone, because I tried to use my first name and my last name. I looked up that on like Spotify and Apple Music. I was like, there's so many people under that name. It's such a common name. Not to mention, throwback to when I was like in elementary school, I met two different firefighters that had the exact same government name as me. It's crazy. But so I was like, I need something. And I was like, I wasn't even thinking as the D being my middle initial. It was more like just finding something that worked. And I said marked. And I was like, but what if I took out the E from the word and made an apostrophe, because that would stand out. And I was like, okay, let's run with that, because I feel like it suited me, but at the same time, it was an artist name, but it was also who I was. And although it's much easier to explain. And the only problem I've come across as of right now is searching my name on like Apple Music, because you search marked with the apostrophe D on Apple Music, and it's one of the toughest things to find unless you know the song name that you're looking for. But other than that, searching it on Spotify, fantastic. I feel like the search bar works perfectly for Spotify, but Apple Music is a little bit troublesome. But
Yeah.
But I mean, it was an artist name. It was who I was now. I was becoming somebody that I felt like longevity truly was the focal point, building that artist name and building that brand, because now I could build a brand around that. And I've just started to incorporate different items and elements to what I want to have as something, come back to the parenthood, to potentially pass down to my kids, like that could inspire them to do whatever they want to do. Not that they have to do music, but like it'd be cool if I could just at least build something for them, so that they're not, so they can either do it if they want to or whatever. But yeah, it was a much needed step, though, I think. And the blessing that COVID was it allowed me to have so much time to myself and really think about it and what I needed to do next. Because nobody was releasing music, really, and nobody was performing. So it was a perfect time to reassess, reevaluate, and truly take the steps needed to do that. So
Wow. Love the name. What projects are you, I guess, what's the next projects we might?
I'm still working on singles. I wanted, my ideal plan would be to release an album next year, but being 2023, considering it's December 31st, which it feels like it's like April 2nd out there.
Right, because of the weather is weird.
But I don't like to put that, I believe in manifesting, but I don't want to set a limit on, like, give myself disappointment if I don't put out an album next year, because I feel like I've done that in the past, and it's like, I'm dropping an album this year, and then I still have yet to release an album. You did say I released EPs, albums, singles, and whatnot, but no official albums yet.
Party, no party on the podcast.
No, that's my podcast, though. Shout out the podcast.
Party on the podcast, of course. But like
it was Party on a Sunday.
Yeah, Party on a Sunday.
It was 8 tracks, but I called it an EP.
What?
I'll consider it a mixtape more than anything.
Okay, mixtape. Yeah, because I've seen albums.
It was an album. It was an album, but I didn't call it an album.
I've seen albums that are like 5 songs. I'm like, what the hell?
This was like a 8 to 10 track.
Yeah, I think it was more than 8. Yeah, I freaking love that.
But that
project.
It was a great step forward for me, because I put on my own show at the Carlton for it. I mean, it was just eye-opening for me, because I got to do everything that encompassed an album release, but I did it myself. So it exposed me to promotion, marketing, planning, event planning, show booking, dealing with promoters, dealing with booking agents and venues and stuff like that. And it was like, it gave me a first glance of dealing with this stuff as a solo artist, as an independent artist, because it was something that I never truly experienced, because I've always just relied on other booking agents or people that are putting on shows to either approach me or
Invite you.
I approach them saying, I see you're doing this show, do you mind if I come through, or is it cool if I do a set or whatever? But this was like my show. I'm putting it on. It's my release party. I booked it. I did everything leading up to it, and it was just cool to see that experience. And I feel like coming into 2023, especially with my lack of shows since COVID, putting on more shows, but I'm looking to do more intimate shows where my style has changed. My genre is much more focused around the whole R&B pop side of things, so I can slow it down and I can create an environment that doesn't need 50 to 100 people and loud music at that, but it can have like a small like cafe
Intimate
style,
stuff,
like 20 to 30 people max, and it's like even that's plenty for what I'm looking for, because it's just to invite people in and like this is the style that I want to approach, and this is how I'm going to introduce it and put on these shows to start just making the waves. So that's the plan for 2023. Singles right now, hoping for an album by 2024 though.
Okay.
That's what I feel much more confident in saying 2024,
2024,
because
okay.
it allows me to. What I did over this past year was build a catalog, because I was doing a song a month for like 7 months. And I was like, this is what
insane, actually.
This is what I needed to just build a catalog, but it was terribly stressful.
Yes, it was insane.
Because it was like I was doing one, and then I was like, I have less than a month to promote this next one. I was like, so I'm basically just putting out music to put out music just to keep the catalog building.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic to have a way of doing it. But once I hit a roadblock of either production or mixing or funds, it was like, let's take that as a sign to step back and focus on making the next release promoted properly, marketed properly, done well, done right. Not that they weren't done well, but the appropriate time that it takes to put a single together and not force it for a certain date.
Yep.
Let it dictate, like let the process of the recording and everything dictate the date. So, and the way that social media nowadays, especially with like TikTok, promoting songs that way is so much easier, because teasers are what everybody wants, and inclusion is what they want to have as a possibility too. So it's like I can throw ideas out here saying, should I do this? Should I do that? And it's just interactive. So, yeah, that's 2023 for me.
It's always great talking to you, and I'm going to let you go because I know Homeboy is waiting for you.
Oh, he might just be waking up. He went down for a nap at noon. So,
yeah, I know. So I'm going to let you go with this question, though. You know, fatherhood, you're working on this project, you have all these things. How are you balancing it all?
Support system at home. I think my wife, because I got married on December 16th.
Congrats.
Thank you. She's...
Yes, you did. You put the thing up and you're like, yes, it's true.
It was...
You were like, I'm just...
We did it very
you
low-key.
always do things like... Exactly.
Low-key.
You always do things
but
like... It's like...
It's funny because I've had my hand up this whole time, too.
Yeah,
I was like,
I know.
But I mean, that could have been an engagement ring, too.
No.
Right?
I remember because I saw the post and you always do these like... It's something huge where you kind of like
nonchalant.
It's like it's freaking big. It's like it's, you know.
Well, not that we need to dive into it, but it's like I like the moments to be personal moments, and like announcing them is great to let people know, but like I don't need to make them a big deal for them to be a big deal to me. Like they're a big deal to the people that I had there that day. You know, like we went to the courthouse. We didn't do a big wedding. We didn't. We were going to plan for a big wedding in August, but it was like we went over all our finances. We went over our plans, what we were really looking forward to in the day. And it was like, you know what, let's just do this for us. And that was the best decision. And I feel so much better about it. And yeah. So what was your question?
Support system.
Being able to go home, decompress. I mean, I have my son. I can lose all my stress just by seeing his face, seeing his smiles, hearing his laugh. It just completely separates me from the real world. And everything that goes into the music or work or whatever else is going on in my life. My son, my wife, it's just a way of, like, I just feel so much more, like, just solace and just zenning out at home now. Not that, and we need having a baby kind of ruins a lot of the space because you don't have a lot of space in the house anymore, but in the apartment. But just being able to have them and they don't even have to do anything special. Just be there. And I never ask anything, obviously, of him, but I don't ask anything of her. She supports without me asking. And having that system in place without expectation, I think allows me to thrive and build and want to do it more, but do it on my own terms, do it at my own pace, not have the pressure of wondering what's next or when's this gonna happen. I just get to do it as I please and do it as I will.
Thanks so much. And
Thank you.
I mean, make sure you check out Party on the Podcast. I love your podcast.
I need to have you on a podcast episode now. We need to do this exchange.
Okay, well, send an invite. I'll show up. But man, Mark, thank you so much for coming in, and congrats on everything.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me. This has been good catching up. It's been long overdue. Very long overdue.